Okay, so I'll introduce the guest that I have today, which is manager of Story Driven Peter Katz. Peter works with us as a part of our industry roster. Continues to receive scripts from our competitions, both on the feature side and the television side. And today we're going to use this opportunity and take advantage of Peter's time to sort of discuss some of the things that we feel that writers might benefit from knowing in today's landscape, and how they might be able to, in this particular conversation, how they might be able to use some of that knowledge to increase their chances of finding representation and getting their work out there into the industry. So thanks for chatting with me today, Peter. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on your show.
No problem. So Peter, you're on board to read the top scripts that Shore gets from our competition every year. And you're also one of the managers who reads the top three scripts that we send over that are the highest rated in coverage every month. So I guess the best place to start is, what are the types of stories and writers that you're particularly looking for, and what are you looking for when you receive those projects in particular?
So I'm looking for genre projects in film and TV, but I'm also looking for dramas and comedies that are a bit darker or more left of center.
And just so we can clarify for writers who are not as familiar with the vernacular, when we're talking about genre, we're talking about, by and large, things that focus on sci-fi, horror, and occasionally, Western, but very things that have very defined, generally speaking, iconography and setting and visual representation.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, with the screenplays that you read over the course of a year, what are the things that you're looking for that stand out to you, or make a script, separate itself from the top, or a writer separate itself from the large and ever increasing pile of scripts that, come across your desk?
I think that I'm looking at concepts that are interesting and I want to be very specific. Doesn't mean that they're like high concept. It could be what it's like to be a 90-year-old fisherman in Minnesota, or some random character pulls me in, because sometimes people go, oh, I'm interested in, in like these concepts, like what's that idea? And then it's always reduced to I think like a 90s pitch guy with a giant cell phone going, I'm looking for some, it's like Jaws, but with paws. And it's like some like totally ridiculous idea. I don't care about that. I want people that have ideas that pull me in for different reasons. I think sometimes when I talk about the world of being a manager, it's reduced to this log line that is like you reinvented sci-fi with this one concept, but in reality, there are character-driven work that has an area you want to explore. Let's say it's multi-level marketing. This idea that who are caught up in this insane business that forces them to constantly sell, random items to their friends and family. That's not necessarily a high concept, but that's a world I want to explore. So there's something inherently interesting about the material. There's something that makes you want to check it out. And that could be a multitude of different reasons. And if it's character based or it's conceptual, it's a big idea, any of those, but there's something that makes you want to read it. I think sometimes there's things I don't want to read because I've seen that before. So it's just generic. It's an alcoholic cop who's lost his wife and wants to solve a mystery.
Yeah.
Okay, what is it about that? Is he a robot? Why do I care about this individual? Or it's so out there that it's esoteric and I don't even understand how this works. There's too many details. So it's like this perfect balance of things that I know and things I don't know, the strange, the things that I want to explore.
Right. Nobody's asking a writer to invent a new universe that has never been seen before, but there has to be something that does draw you in, that feels unique either to the moment or to the voice, something that separates it. So you want that balance between the familiar and that X factor that feels new.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, I know that you're reading a lot of scripts. You and I have had some conversations recently, in particular about horror scripts and stuff that sort of plays in that ballpark. What advice would you give to writers in terms of playing in one particular genre or expanding, casting a wider net in terms of the kinds of things that they're writing? Is it valuable for a writer to create especially one who's unrepresented, to create a voice and become known as somebody who's working in the horror space and be sort of innovative in that space? Or is it more valuable to have a wider variety of types of stories, to have stuff in different genres, different formats, vis-a-vis film and television? I'm curious what your thoughts are on that for newer writers.
I think you just got to write a lot. If you're over curatorial and you're trying to write for this market that doesn't exist, then you're missing out. I mean, if you look at screenwriting, like anything, it's like being a great chef. It's not like a chef sits around and goes, what would be like my brand? It's like they're cooking and making and having people taste the work and they like it or not liking. It's just iterating.
Yes.
I mean, so I think it's just generating material, getting a trustworthy cabal of people that you can hand material to that are like your brain trust, have them read that, give notes, work on it, and then move on to the next material. Sometimes I see someone that's like, been working on the script for 5 years. 5 years? That's a lot of time. You could have written 5 scripts, maybe. So like,
Yeah.
I would just make sure that you're consuming a lot of movies and TV shows and books and comics and podcasts. Like, if you want to write a rom-com or you want to write a Western, I think for me, my point of view is go on Letterboxd and not just look at the top 10 in your specific area that you're writing a story in. Write things that are, or watch things that are weirder and different, or like watch foreign films, watch movies that weren't amazing. Because I think sometimes people are like, oh, I only want to watch A24 films. That's great. They make great films. But what about a movie that's imperfect, which does interesting things? So I think it's like, how do you expand your vocabulary so you could compete against other people? Because the deeper you dive into these genres and you could expand your point of view, in a way, you're going against the person who has a limited point of view, who hasn't watched all those movies and TV shows and read those books in the genre and really got into it. And then you could access something specific. You could be more unique with your tone because you know what's been out there. You can do more misdirection because you know what the tropes are. And it's not just going, I've lived a life. I'm interesting. I'm going to access my life. Great, access your life, but now you have the vocabulary to talk about.
Right.
The most interesting man or woman in the world may not be that interesting in their script because they may not be able to articulate what's interesting about their life. They could be like, oh my God, I got into this war. I saw a UFO. I saw all these things, but they can't take all that information and distill it into something where you get the essence of it. And then you consume it and you go, wow, this is so powerful. It's emotionally moving. Think about like this. You see a stand-up comedian and all they're talking about is driving their kid to the aquarium. That's all it is. It's nothing like epic. But a great comedian could go, let me tell you, it took me 2 hours to get to the aquarium, but it's a 20-minute drive. And you're like, what? This is how long it takes to get a kid anywhere. It's like 2 hours more.
Yeah.
Schedule it. Like, you start going into that and you're like, oh my God, I'm living in this person's life. Another person who's not a great storyteller, not like this comedian I speak of, goes, I jumped out of a helicopter of a parachute. And you're like, oh wow, the parachute broke. I fell. Whatever. So like, it's like the event itself doesn't have to, it's not what is interesting. It's your voice talking about what's the beats of the situation. So I think some people are like, oh my God, I just came back from Vegas. So you're like, I don't know. Will it be interesting? Do you know how to tell the story? So I think the more you consume culture specific to what you're writing, the better you're going to be able to use your life and be able to talk about it. So I think this whole I'm an interesting guy that goes so far, or girl, you know? So I
Yeah.
think you really need to be an expert of the genres you're working in.
That's I think the most important thing that you mentioned there is in regards to the voice of the writer and how that can, like you said, that can make something mundane completely interesting and engaging, and a lack of it can make something fascinating completely mundane and not accessible to an audience. So I think that's a good thing to kind of hone in on for the moment. How would you what I guess the question is, when you're reading these scripts, especially the ones that have maybe come through a competition like ours, like Shores, where these scripts have been selected from maybe hundreds or thousands and have been whittled down to a couple dozen, and they come across your desk. I'm curious, what sort of gives you the feeling when you're reading that this writer has found their voice? This is something that is it simply you're engaged with the material, whatever that material is, or is there a technical component to that as well? I'm curious how you would define that for you.
Okay, so there are amazing writers and directors out there, and I would never be interested in repping them. They don't appeal to me. So why would I put the work in advocating for them? Because I start off as a fan. So I could read a great script from your program, but it doesn't fit my taste. There's no reason I should work with them. I only rep people that I would love to watch their projects show up on screen. Or if they're a comic book writer, read more of their comics, or they're listening to their podcasts. I don't want to just rep anyone who's just good. It's good plus taste.
Good
Right?
plus taste.
Yeah, because I mean, the amount of great screenplays that get sent to me for representation is, I have a stack. The amount of filmmakers every week I get approached with countless opportunities. And I'm only working with individuals that I would just be excited to see what they do next. And it's simple as that. It's not like I, as a manager, have a magic wand and I'm like, this person is going to be blessed and they're good. Like, there are people out there and they make movies and TV shows I never want to watch. There's no way I'd watch them. It's like there's comedians that are out there. I'm like, I don't want to see them do stand-up or whatever, but they have a huge audience. I only represent storytellers that I could start on fan mode. Before I'm in this manager mode where I'm like, I gotta sell something. I'm like, am I a fan? Would I pay money to experience this person's work?
Yes.
That's the first question I ask myself. Do I want more of this? The answer is yes. Then I proceed and we talk. We see, do we have a relationship? But yeah, I don't think I have a universal taste, because there's plenty of reps that will like someone that I don't respond to. And it doesn't mean that the quality is bad. It just means that, just like someone says, hey, you want to see a comedy show? Who's performing? I don't just want to see
Right.
live music. What kind of music? Like, what is it? What is it the thing? Like, I'm just gonna see generic music? Yes, I want music. It's same thing with scripts. Like, there's a script. It's good. You want to read it? Like, but why? Like, what is it about it that gets me excited?
Do you think that that writers should be encouraged by that fact or discouraged by that fact? Because it can be incredibly difficult to feel as a writer that your work is getting turned down, or representation or sort of turning down your work over and over again, when they may say, hey, the quality is good, but I'm just not connecting with it. Because in some ways you could see that as discouraging, because how can you just, it's hard to find the needle in the haystack who resonates with your work and thinks that you're talented and wants to work with you. Or is it a good thing, because it really shows that with persistence you can find the right fit, and in the end that's going to be better for your career in the long run?
It's a great thing for a writer, because it means that one person is not in charge of their life. Can you imagine another profession? Somebody was like, nah, you can't be a lawyer. Why? I don't like how you practice. Oh no, you can't be a teacher. Here it's like there's multiple reps and they may all have different points of view. And then one of them might really connect with you. Okay, worst case scenario, nightmare. You can't get a rep. Oh no, no manager agent. Do you know what you do? Make a podcast, write short stories, shoot a web series. No one, I can't stop you. The manager is going to stop you. Just make your thing. And you keep making your thing. As I mentioned recently, I got interviewed. I was saying I'm a big fan of John Waters. There wasn't a market research that came together that said you should make Pink Flamingos. Like, this is the thing or whatever. Like, guy wanted to make his movie.
Not.
Yeah, no, not at all. A guy wanted to make a movie, and he did it. He made his film. I think this issue is like about reps. Are they going to unlock everything? Are they going?
Yeah, is it the golden goose to getting your career from nothing to everything that you've ever wanted? There are many writers who think that by signing with a rep, that's done for them. They've now gotten that, and it's in that magical representation's hands to sort of get them where they want to go.
So I think that like it's somehow like when we talk about industry stuff, the easiest way is to speak in a binary way. It makes you more authoritative. It's like it's only this or only that. I hate that. It's so annoying. It's like, no, there's always a spectrum of things. So yes, a manager and agent could help, but you know what could also help? A movie night. Get all your friends who are writers and directors and have a movie night once a month. Invite as many people who are aspiring as possible to just watch a movie and then talk about it and hang out, and, shoot the shit, have fun. That movie night could be a platform for collaboration. Because if you think about it, a lot of film school is, how do we get all these passionate people together? That's great. What if you're not going to film school, right? But you love movies? What if you're in advertising and you really want to write? Well, a movie night, have them come to your place, have some pizza, invite people who love movies, who want to write, bring people over. At a certain point, that social network condenses, and there's individuals who go, we've been watching movies, why don't we try to make one?
What advice would you give to writers who are in that position where they've decided they're going to take that part of their career into their own hands. They're going to go out and produce something. What recommendation would you give to them in terms of putting a project like that together independently?
Basically, order pizza, and if you guys drink alcohol, buy beer or whatever, and get snacks, and invite people who are obsessive about movies like you with no agenda, and do a regular movie night, maybe a Slack group where you talk about the movies that you watched, and build a little community. Watch these movies, have fun. And as this goes on a regular basis, these routines, you go, how about I invite this director? She did a short film. Bring her into the movie night. Oh, I know there's an actor who he's done local short films and maybe a little indie feature. Bring them and just do a community movie night with no ambition, zero. And you're hanging out. And you got a director over here, a screenwriter over here, an actor, someone who might have a few bucks to throw around. And one of these days, a few months into it, you go, watching all these movies, why don't you just do a digital series? I got a camera. Oh, there's another guy here who has audio equipment. So you, instead of looking for the project, you build the community. Because so many people are all about, I just need this contact, I just need this, there's this person above over here. What if you just looked around and you were like, oh my God, my cousin has a real estate business. We could use one of his buildings. Oh, I got this other person over here who's part of an acting troupe. Let's bring them in. There's so much this idea that you need something. What if I told you you have everything you already need right now?
Be
to
creative.
build, to be creative. Now, I'm not going to say this group is instantly going to be successful financially, but I will say to be successful, you have to prove yourself, right? So you build a collective by just watching movies, and then they get together and make something. It might suck, but be okay that it sucks and just keep doing it till it sucks less,
Yeah.
until it's actually pretty good. Same thing with being a writer. You're gonna write a lot, but if you have a fun writers group and you keep getting feedback and keep getting better, it'll be better and better. So this idea that there's this one missing part of you, which is this or that or anything, it's bullshit. You are a complete artist already. But since film is collaborative, TV or series and that stuff, how do you pull together a scene that has things you don't have? That's not about one person above you. Because there's this podcast I really respect, Lauren Shippen. She created this podcast series called the Bright Sessions. It's an audio drama, and she literally got two mics and her actor friends, and she created a podcast, and it's really good. It's like X-Files, like Monster of the Week, weird characters, but in therapy, like special powers. And it's just a podcast, two mics. It was done. So I think sometimes we're like, oh my God, like we need approval. You don't. What you need is community.
Mm-hmm.
Community first, and use that to help leverage all your other opportunities.
I think that's great advice. In terms of community, do you think it's important for writers to physically be in a location? Obviously, the number one being the Los Angeles area, so that you have more opportunities like that to meet like-minded people. Do you think that in this day and age, is it less important than it's ever been, or do you find that even geographically there are still benefits to being physically closer to that industry and that community, whether it's LA, New York's a major hub for writers and entertainment?
I think you could be anywhere. I think you could use Zoom to build community if you have nowhere like instant access to people, or you can just go to a coffee shop with your friends, watch movies. Like I think that sometimes we look to like LA as the end all, but there's plenty of great filmmakers everywhere and writers. I think there's so many more opportunities to zero in on what you care about. So the idea that you're in LA or not in LA, this all depends. I mean, you could argue that if you're not in LA, there's people that are like dying to collaborate. So if you're in, let's say, San Diego, you could be part of a San Diego film club. And you're writing in it, you're testing things out. I think the problem is this. We only look at the fancy stuff people do, right? We don't look all the way into the past, all like the kind of schlocky stuff that they do. So when it's shiny, we know about it because that's what the journalists cover. But if you look at your favorite creators and go further back, you realize a lot of them were sucking for a while before they got good.
Yeah, it takes a lot of reps to get to that point that everybody admires.
Yeah, so I think that the key is community and also being patient with yourself. Not going, oh my God, this one thing needs to sell or this one thing. Go, you know what? I'm going to keep learning, keep building my network. You don't know what's possible, but it shouldn't be binary. It's not binary advice. That's a problem with too many of the gurus is that they go, if you don't do this, it's over. Okay, so here, I'll say it. If you don't want to build a community, that's also fine. If you just want to write, that's all good too. I'm only speaking to tactics. I think everything becomes so reductive where it's like, you have to be a community person or you fail. No, there's plenty of people who are like lone wolves that are successful. So I'm just saying these are different ways that you could angle on opportunities that are around you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you think now for a writer that's say gotten through Shore's competition, whether they have a community or not, they've sort of managed to get some project off the ground, it's getting some attention, they've become maybe a finalist and their script is circulated to the industry roster, folks like yourself, but they've not been able to capitalize on that success or what they perceive to be that success that may lead to the next thing, whether it's representation, getting their project optioned. I'm curious, what advice would you give to the writers who are who need to stay the course and are writing, let's say at a good technical level, and they found a voice, but they're still not seeing the next step for them that they envision for themselves.
Okay, there's two things. I personally, this is not a rule, do what makes sense, build a writers group so you could get constructive feedback. Most people hate reading scripts. So if somebody I don't know is like, read a random script. Like they read like reading good scripts, not a script. There's a difference. There's like a generic script. Like I said, you want to go see comedy? Who's the comedian? Like what's the thing? Like there's a world of difference. It'd be good to have a group that you could workshop. Because if you just ask your partner, hey, can you read my script? People are like, I don't know. But if you say, hey, you're a writer, you have a script, there's a transaction, we will make each other better as long as it's a supportive group. So that's one thing. The second thing is probably a bit more unorthodox, but I think it's important. I think writers need to know how to pitch. They write and they work on the writing, they're not working on their pitching.
It goes back to what you were talking about, being able to articulate something interesting, even if it's relatively mundane, or being able to, simultaneously make somebody disinterested in something that fundamentally might be great on the page. So this element is also incredibly important.
Okay. Somehow there's a disconnect between a verbal storyteller and writing. To me, it's the same thing. So if I'm going to put a writer in a room with an executive, they only have a short amount of time to talk about their point of view, projects that they're interested in. So I think writers need to look at speaking like writing, that you get better and better the more you do it. It's not something you could outsource to a rep where you're like, I don't need to learn how to talk about my ideas. Get at it, manager. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
manager stuff. So instead, I'm like, you are part of this ecosystem. There is a project. I get the interest. You come in there and you try to sell it. It's team effort. Okay. We're a partnership. So I think writers should think about how they could pitch every project, whether or not it's the 10-minute version of their pitch down to the 3-minute version of the pitch. And you practice on people over and over again. You do those reps. Practice on the barista. You practice on all these people. I got a story idea. Can I do it? You don't tell them, hey, I got a script and these are other things. You just go, hey, we're hanging out. Can I tell you an idea? People are like, okay, sure, try me. And then you pitch them. You got to do that obsessively. Obsessively. You got to get really good at it. Because if you get really good at it, it's going to be a competitive advantage. I'm not saying you have to get at it, because there's plenty of super rich writers that are not pitch, like wizards or whatever. But a lot of the opportunities you're going to get are going to come from and saying why you should get staffed on the show, should get an assignment, should pitch a project, advocate for your development if you're having a disagreement with a director or producer, going, hey, this is why this is the best idea. So if you can articulate your vision, it's a huge disadvantage. So for me, before you have a manager and agent, look at the 2 scripts you wrote and go, how do I sell them? How do I speak about the unique qualities of these projects that will get someone excited? And I don't mean people who are supposed to get excited that are being nice, but people that have zero stake in your success. And try it out. The first time, it's not going to work so well. You're going to be like, and there's this cop who could time travel. And they're going to be like, what? Who's the cop? And you're like,
You to go
no.
back and consider the important elements of what you want to articulate.
You're like, what if like a cop could police the past? And then you go, tell me more. I'm just saying all these true crime stories that over the last 100 years, what if a cop could police the past? Imagine the rights, of these citizens in this time have no cop that has this level of sophisticated policing. What if they could do that? Oh, that's better. It's called time cop. Or whatever the hell you want to call it, but like you workshop it and you try it out. I mean, I do it. I will make a phone call and I'll pitch something and it'll be terrible. It just doesn't work. And I go, change it a little bit. And then you might be going, that's how I roll. I'm a writer. Just give my stuff away. If you want to fight for your position on a project, you have to be able to argue your case. Say you do sell a script, and you're just kind of like, I don't want to talk to people. What if there's a rewrite process? We're getting all these notes. And you're like, oh God, I hate these notes. But you can't defend your position. Maybe you just get ran over. And everybody's like, no, you have the wrong ideas. You're going to have to do it. And that's it. Then you're in a corner. So I think that like to be able to do a lot of different things beyond writing, which is important, learn how to sell yourself, sell your projects. And if you want help, take improv classes, acting classes, do Toastmasters, which is a free program that's all about speaking. Get that sharp, because if you sharpen those skills, you're a lot more viable in the marketplace.
That's phenomenal advice, I think, for experienced writers and new writers as well. We're running out of time here, so I will just say thank you very much to Peter Katz from Story Driven for joining us today. Peter, before we sign off, is there any other, is there anything else that you feel the writer community at Shore or the wider, larger, writer community should know, or maybe something they should take away from this conversation above all?
I think people should look at networking, not just this idea that there's these fancy people that are behind a gate, because I think that's like a terrible thing. It's like, I got to access this person. I think you should always be focused on the people around you, because the communities, the movements where projects get moving could be your director friend, a producer friend, an actor. It's like, there's obviously projects you can't do with your buddies if you wrote $100 million movie. But at the same time, if you're writing like a comedy, who can you work with? What are those things going on? But sometimes there's this idea of like, oh man, if I had a rep, or oh, I had this. You should just get busy. Make things that are kind of like, times a little rough, but they're an expression of your ideas. Because you don't know that one web series that you did for like $2,000 gets you staffed. It's like being able to make things and being dynamic. If you're writing projects that aren't huge, if they're big projects, then I think, yeah, they're going to need that budget. But I think if you have that range of the types of material you're working in, then I think you should always be open to pulling in people in your net. Maybe only directed a short film, but the short film played like Slam Dance or whatever, that you're pulling in your team. Like, what's around you is very valuable. It's not like I have to abandon this or who I am, what I've done to get to this next level. You could be here for a while, but really leverage that network to find value.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, Peter. Really appreciate the time. You and I will, I'm sure, touch base on
For sure.
on things in this regard down the line. So, I want to just thank you again, and hopefully if anybody from from the Shore community has any additional questions, we'll find another time to answer, do a Q&A with some of the questions that we get from our writer community. But yeah, for now, really appreciate your time, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.